Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to everybody to today's session. Thanks for attending. I hope you're going to get all or most of your questions answered. And we've got a jam-packed program for just about 2 hours. For those of you who got the invite for 5 hours, we won't keep you that long. And the topic today is how to unlock transparency, and we're paving the way for trust and accountability with our trust beneficial ownership register. So the master has put this webinar together, and we are going to cover where we are with legislation, what is the way forward, as well as people's practical issues. We're also going to have a demo of the system, so we're going to really get practical. So hopefully, if we haven't got your questions answered, keep them. We try to cover as many as we were made aware of. So obviously, since 2022, we had a bit of a tsunami. Trust service providers, accountants, everybody involved with trusts. And that is because the Trust Property Control Act has been amended with effect from 1 April 2023. The implementation was done in quite a bit of a hurry. And obviously, it's very new to South Africans. In South Africa, we're very unique because often our families members are the trustees. It's not like international trust service providers where you have countries where you can only have the professional trustee. And that made things really difficult because trusts weren't kept up to date and being treated as a separate entity really in the past. So when these new measures were added, people thought, it's like absolutely now we have to start doing something, whereas just a few things were added that we need to report on. That information mostly we were supposed to have as trust service providers or as trustees in any event. So South Africa is a member of the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, as we know it, and we are obliged to ensure that our regulatory environment is geared towards international standards in anti-money laundering and the combating of financing of terrorism. So a lot of people thought, this is something our government thought it's a good idea to just annoy trustees and trust service providers to just report additional information. It's not the case. It's South Africa who have to comply with international standards. And clearly, there's been a pretty low level of compliance, which will now have a significant impact on us exiting the grey list. We've been grey listed early last year. So obviously, the plan was to take the 2 years to get off. Those 2 years, can you believe it, is coming up in January 2025. So the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development issued a media statement back in 17 September 2024, and the title was Trustees Not Complying with Provisions of the Amended Trust Property Control Act to Face Harsher Punishment. That's obviously in an attempt to get people to comply. And in there, sorry, can we just unmute or mute people, please? So obviously, they put a deadline of 15th of November. So that is obviously 2 weeks left, and there's a great drive to get everybody who actually haven't submitted their beneficial ownership registers to do so. It's a numbers game, and that's what we're on about, and we are going to see today how we can up those numbers and work with the Chief Master's Office. We have independent trustees in South Africa for some of the family trust, but I really have sympathy with the family trust, the layperson trustees who often, don't even have access to information and certainly don't keep up to date. And that's why we've invited the accountants on board, because we will see that they cross the path of trust in some other way, and our accountants can also help to actually, become compliant and assist the layperson trustees. On 23 July 2024, the FIC also issued a media release, and they stated that they are aware of the designated non-financial businesses and professions, typically your accountants, attorneys, etc., estate agents, and they say they keep ignoring the FIC's directives where they have to submit information to the FIC, and that was also hindering exiting of the grey list. So these institutions now face targeted inspections or targeted credit sanction for their non-compliance. And I have spoken to a couple of trust service providers, accountants who had, knocks on their doors with the FIC coming to audit them. So the whole landscape has changed, and it's really hard to make sense of all of this and to help people to actually comply in a practical way and unblocking hindrances for them. So the purpose of this webinar today is to really raise awareness about the compliance with the provisions of the amended Trust Public Control Act, and obviously to clarify matters and answer questions raised. And obviously, if you have questions over and above those that we have on for today, please keep them. And the assistance is there from the master to help you to comply by the 15th of November. I have esteemed panelists on board with me. Obviously, the acting chief master, Advocate Kanyane Matibe. We have Mr. Walter Bengo from SAICA, who can introduce himself. Also, Mr. Louis van Vieren from FISA, the Fiduciary Institute of South Africa. And then Ms. Sadia Amort, who's the manager of legislation and regulatory oversight at the Banking Association, obviously representing the bank. So you can see our reach is quite big today in terms of speaking to the right people who can help submitting beneficial ownership registers. So this is just the first round to get things in. There's a lot of negativity. We all know about that. There's a lot of criticism in terms of the legislation, what is required from us, how do we need to go about to do it. There were difficulties with submitting the information to the master at first when we had that Google Docs format. This is a first for everybody. When we feel overwhelmed, the master and the officers are feeling equally overwhelmed, and we're trying to kind of work it out with them. We see the same things happening with SARS. Recently we've implemented the IT3Ts, and they also have their teething problem. So don't for once think that they got it waxed and sorted out. Everybody's kind of feeling their way. So best I explain to people always is work with what you've got, read the legislation and just implement that. Don't over supply information or complicate things. Try and read what you have to provide and literally stick with that. Yes, this is the first round, and the FATF also starting making noises now that they are busy refining, their requirements, and they are moving more and more to the risk-based approach where countries can use that to really focus on the risky entities such as companies and trusts. So yes, this is the first round, not perfect, but it is something we have to comply as is, so we can see where we can get the master to bend the rules a little bit just to get the numbers correct, and to obviously have the first round on the master's portal. So we thought we're going to start with a bit of an economic oversight. I tried to do a summary. I thought I'm not a specialist, I'm not an economist, so better to hear from a specialist just to kind of set the scene and just give you a feel for, grey listing, obviously the impact that it already had, when we got grey listed, but what would the implications be if we don't exit the list. So now I just need to share, and I need to find the video.
Good morning. While we're waiting for Fia to share the video, if I could please just ask all the participants to please use the Q&A link to ask their questions, and instead of the chat box to ask their questions. That would be appreciated. But also just to answer a question that has been asked repeatedly in the chat box, will this link be available? Yes, it's being recorded and it will be available as a YouTube link at a later stage, probably by Friday. If I may just request that we stop using the chat box, rather use the Q&A box to communicate with us or to ask any questions. Ms. Patrice Venter, as well as Ms. Lerato Nguna, are manning the Q&A box and will be responding to you, be it a technical ICT problem or be it a master's legislation related question. And I think now I can hand over to Fia for the video. And if Fia is still not available, can I ask Mr. Mgiba to please play the video from his side? Thank you.
Advocate, can we please ask him to play it?
Okay, let's do that from his side then. But in the meantime, I think maybe it's best I then introduce myself since I've already come on board. My name is Kanyane Matibe. I'm the acting chief master of the Master of the High Court South Africa. And I think it's important, as Fia has mentioned, that we were grey listed last year. And having been grey listed, there are a couple of things that were put in the legislation or in the amended Trust Property Control Act that mandated the master or gave them three responsibilities. The three responsibilities are: we had to create an electronic beneficial ownership register. Secondly, we had to now give access to this register to law enforcement agencies. And lastly, which is a self-imposed obligation, not part of the FATF, we had to keep a register of disqualified trustees, and which we would then share with trust companies, with other trustees, to ensure that a disqualified trustee is not on the register. Now, that is from a master's point of view in terms of where we come from and what our responsibilities are as the regulator. And also in terms of the Trust Property Control Act, some of you are quite familiar with it, and I hope you all are. And I just want to reiterate in terms of Section 11, Cap A1 of the Trust Property Control Act, trustees also have a responsibilities. Their responsibilities are four. First is to establish and record the beneficial ownership of a trust or the trust that has been set up. They need to keep a record of the prescribed information relating to the beneficial owners of the trust. They must then lodge that register on the prescribed information on the beneficial owners of the trust with the master's office. And this is why this webinar was important, because there is a deadline. The lodgement of that register or information on the beneficial owners being lodged with the Master of the High Court. And lastly, the fourth responsibility or obligation imposed on trustees is that they need to ensure that the prescribed information referred to in paragraphs A to C are kept up to date. This is the information that we'll go into detail about as we then explain the practicalities. Ms. Patrice Venter will then make a presentation in terms of what is this information that to be lodged. When you are aware that it needs to be lodged by the 15th of November, and after the 15th of November, there has been a decision that there would be a 15-day grace period where we then give you 15 days before penalties are then imposed. Ms. Venter will also speak to the penalties that would be imposed. But I think it is also important to recognize that there might have been challenges that are experienced either by trustees or even ordinary members of the public that might have a family trust that they are taking care of. There might be challenges on the floor, and we're here today to resolve those challenges. First, to hear the challenges. If the challenges are ICT related, there is ICT on board, and they would be able to assist you. The challenges are related to us as the master, then we need to resolve that with you today. But also important to mention that we have a big trust population as the master, where we need to still keep compliance. Currently, we are at around 15.6% of compliance, and that is on the total population of trusts. That then tells us that there are still a lot of trusts that have not lodged beneficial ownership information with the master. And today, that this is an encouragement. I think it's a nudge for all trustees to lodge this information with the master. And we are aware that of this big population of plus minus 650,000 trusts that we have on our records. There are many that have been terminated. There are many that are dormant. And we are going to give you an avenue in terms of the terminated as well as a dormant trust, where we remove the need or the obligation to submit this information. However, there would be information that we would require from you in order for us to give you that, or to exclude you, preclude you from submitting beneficial ownership information. I would like to think we are ready and hand over back to the moderator. Thank you. And if I could please ask that hands are not raised, there would be a time for Q&A where we will take questions from the floor. Thank you. Back to you, Fia.
Thanks, Advocate. It looks like we had the video up there, so if we can have that played, that'll be great.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Adamse. Sorry that I cannot be present with the direct intervention and the direct meeting. So, to give you a bit of background, I was a professor in economics at the University of Pretoria for more than 25 years, till a period about 2005. At that stage, I was also the director of the Investment and Trade Policy Center, where we did under Mbeki and Trevor Manuel's administration a lot of work in Africa on providing mentorships for trade negotiators in Africa. So that was a large part of research, and also research on, you know, the way forward for economic strategy in South Africa in that center. So I was very aware on the growth employment redistribution program that was so successful under the Mbeki administration to 2007. So since then, I became an advisory economist in private sector. At this stage, I'm at Sakwa Capital Management. I am the advisory economist on the investment team, where we, of course, manage more than 2 billion rands of funds domestically as well on global share portfolios, and also keep us very interested and a part of our business in retirement. It is so important if one look at the effects of South Africa's grey listing. I say from the start, you cannot isolate this. There are a lot of opinions on the effect of grey listing that it had and maybe still will have. So one cannot isolate this from the economy of South Africa itself. So my presentation will cover both aspects on the grey listing as well as the effect that it had on the current economy and the other way around. How the current economy had an effect on the fact that we, of course, the grey listing a few years later. So if one look at the grey listing, we were grey listed in February 2023, due to the fact that the Financial Action Task Force felt that South Africa did not comply with international standards around the prevention of money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing. So something is literally wrong with our financial system and the compliance around that. And the Global Financial Crime Watchdog realized this and gave South Africa some time to get these house in order. What's important here is that it seems though that if you look at a lot of analysts in the financial markets, more of them reckon that this comes from momentum investments of the research that from Papendorp, that is that the weakening of the South Africa's criminal justice system lies within the previous administration, just like the fact that the South African economy found itself in a perfect storm also lies with the previous administration. Supervision of democracy, it is the way that they use its fiscal policy instruments, cadre deployment, and then of course the big problem of state debt that increase due to state capture. So one has to see this all as in one package.
Okay, so to get back to where we are with the program. So basically, we tried to set the scene in terms of the impact that the grey listing had. A lot of people at the time thought that it was priced in when you speak to the economist. However, Dr. Chris Harmse believes that you can actually measure the impact to a certain degree, although it's very complex given all that's happened in terms of stuff that happened in South Africa. So yes, to kind of single it out and say, this was the exact effect. And if there's one thing that I would have liked to show is the fact that the consensus is if we don't get off the list, the impact would be so much more severe. And the timing of this webinar, speaking about statistics, etc., is probably good because on Friday, I don't know, for those of you who've seen the media release where the Financial Action Task Force plenary actually announced on Friday that there were 9 upgrades for South Africa, from the 22 action plan. I'm sure you've heard a lot in the last 2 years about these plans and shortfalls, etc. So there was a 22 item action list. And 8 of those are now largely addressed and 1 is partly addressed. And South Africa is now deemed to largely or being fully addressed on 16 of the 22 action items. So it leaves us with 6 outstanding items that we have to now reach by February. So we will need to address all 6 of those outstanding items by February, but obviously that's why these deadlines are brought closer to us in terms of the trusts 15 November, or as Advocate Matibe said, the end of November. The FATF plenary also approved the upgrade of South Africa's compliance with a further 3 FATF recommendations. You remember there were 40 recommendations, and South Africa is now largely compliant with 37 of the 40. So it's not looking so bad. And we will see now what is the hindrance, and therefore the reason, for the call today to actually work with the Master's Office to up the numbers on beneficial ownership. So there's obviously been substantial progress since 2021. And so where we at the time only had 20 out of the 40 ticked. So there's 1 reporting cycle left, just for those who don't know, with the remaining 6 items. And 3 of these relate to demonstrating a sustained increase in the investigation and prosecution of complex money laundering, terror financing, and unlicensed cross-border money or value transfer services. And the remaining 3 relate to the timely access of beneficial ownership information in respect of companies and trusts. Hence the call today to work with government, because that seems to be one of these stumbling blocks. And Advocate Matibe indicated the low level of compliance that we have at this point. And so if we are successful in addressing all of these remaining action items, the 6 by the next reporting cycle, then the February 2025 FATF plenary will authorize an on-site visit to us, and then that would happen around May 2025. So there's still time, to go to actually get off the grey list. Just shows you the processes. And if the on-site assessment in May 2025 results in a positive outcome, obviously the FATF Africa Joint Group will recommend to the June FATF plenary that South Africa must be delisted from the FATF grey list. However, if we are found not to have adequately addressed the outstanding 6 items, we will be required to continue reporting back to the FATF every 4 months until all action items have been addressed. So then we speak about, extending that to potentially October 2025 or even later. So that is the call today, is to focus on upping those numbers. And that is what we have to work on now. So the Interdepartmental Committee also notes that the action items related to beneficial ownership registries is out of date because they had a September deadline set for themselves, September 2024. And we're obviously beyond that deadline now. And they want to up the coverage for both companies and trusts because they regard that as low. And therefore they are urging, South Africans to comply. And in that media release on Friday, they mentioned the date of 30 November. And that's why Advocate Mtibi referred to the grace period and from 15th of November to the 30th of November. So Advocate Mtibi, I don't know, I think you have done your bit. I don't know if you want to add anything more in terms of where we are and in terms of the legislation, or can we just dive into introducing the panelists and they can summarize the issues and what they are doing to assist their members?
I think please go ahead and introduce the panelist. We will come back at a later stage. Thank you.
Okay, so first I'd like Walter to introduce himself from SAICA, and obviously he's representing a number of trust service providers, and many accountants are also acting as independent trustees. So Walter, over to you.
Thank you very much, and also thank you to all the attendees. I'm Walter Bengu. I'm a project director from the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. Obviously, the work of trust is done by a lot of accountants and even from an auditor perspective, so we're here to represent them. Thanks.
And Walter has sent us many of the issues that are typically experienced by their members. So hopefully, Walter, we've covered the main themes on your side. Just kind of a side note, Advocate Mtibi, Walter's communicated to us that they're struggling to get their chartered accountants recognized on the estate side when they actually have to indicate the profession they belong to. So if you can help there on the estate side afterwards, it'd be very helpful, because I think a lot of chartered accountants are jumping up and down. Okay, then Louis from FISA.
So good morning, everyone, and I'm Louis van Vuren, Chief Executive of the Fiduciary Institute of Southern Africa. And obviously, many of our members are also busy with this process of capturing the BO detail onto the register. Our members have also experienced some issues, but we hope it goes better from here onwards.
Thanks, Louis. Sadia?
Good
From
morning,
BOSA.
everyone. Good morning. My name is Sadia Ahmed. I work in the Market Conduct Division of the Banking Association South Africa. BOSA is the industry body which represents the domestic and international banks which are registered and operating in South Africa. Our member banks have reported the challenges that they have been experiencing, and we have communicated those challenges and experiences to the Master of the High Court, Treasury, and also to the Department of Justice. Thank you so much.
Thanks. And next up is, I think what we've all been waiting for is for the ICT team to just take us through where they're at. They want to talk about the modernization strategy. Obviously, estates, far along the way to be digitalized or electronic system. So maybe just enlighten us in terms of where we are with trust. Not that that's going to help us before the end of the month. So just to tell us briefly about that, and then possibly just do as a system demo. A lot of people are really struggling to get out of the blocks. We have screenshots of people not getting in, and obviously we will address some of those questions. But if you could just take them through in terms of how to submit registers, and just give him a bit of a drive around. There are a number of people who actually never been on the site, interestingly enough. So yeah, if we can then let it over to you guys.
Good morning, Chairperson and panel members and all the attendees on the platform. Before I continue, Chairperson, can you just indicate if I'm audible?
Yes, audible, and I can see your...
Okay, thank you so much. Firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Itumeleng Matlakanya. I'm a Chief Director for ICT Solutions Delivery within the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. So I'm here mainly to walk you through the presentation on how to use the trust beneficial ownership system. So this is the system that most of the people that are on the platform have been using just to comply with the submission of the BO register. So I'll also be addressing some of the questions or concerns and challenges that have been experienced with the system. A colleague from BASA just indicated that they have engaged with us. Some of the issues that they raised there during those engagements were related to the system. So I will also be touching on that. So I must say, members, that the beneficial ownership registry system was developed and rolled out nationwide last year, October. It's almost a year since the inception of this system. And after the rollout, we had quite a number of demonstrations together with the training with different professional bodies, including the financial institutions. And it's through this demonstrations and presentations where we were able to receive a number of issues and suggestions on how best we can improve the system. So in which we were able to deal with some of the issues and improvements that were provided to us by then. And before I get to the presentation to show you how the system works, I must also acknowledge that since the Master of High Court issued a communication about the deadline for submitting the BO information, from IT point of view, we have been receiving quite a number of queries related to the system performance, mainly the slowness of the system. And one will think that if now we have this communication, everyone now want to try and comply, and we are then pressurizing the system. However, as ICT, there are some measures that we put in place just to capacitate our infrastructure to ensure that at least the system perform much better. And after those implementations, I must confirm that there are some financial institutions sometime last week that sent us communication to say they feel like on their side, they managed to submit all the BO information, and what they were requesting from us was just to share the report so that they can align and check if whether they were able to cover everything. I will go through the presentation now. Apologies about that, just to show you how the system works. It's not really a real-time demonstration. It's just on the presentation, but this will really give you more information on how this BO system works. So before you use the system, firstly, you have to register your profile. And we do have 3 levels of registration. You can register as an individual, a trustee as an individual. You can register as an administrator of a specific organization, or you can register as a law enforcement. So if you register as an individual, you will be able to do that through the system. However, if you register as administrator, there is a process that you have to follow. You have to complete a form, go to Master of High Court, and then once it's verified and we are sure that you represent that specific organization, we will then give you access to the system. And as administrator, then going forward, you will be able to add other members within your organization who should be able to use the system. Similarly to the law enforcement personnel, they will follow a certain process through the Master of High Court where they will have to be approved. Once they have been approved, the list of the names will then be sent to us, and us, I mean as ICT, we will be able to add those law enforcement personnel in the system, and when they log in, they will be able to see the functionalities that are related to what the law enforcement need to do. So once you have went through the process of registration, you will have a username and a password. So you'll come to the system, you enter your username, your password, and you also have to verify through the captcha just to check if we're not dealing with the robot. And once you are done with that, you will then receive an OTP. OTP, you can receive it through an email, or a cell phone number that you would have used when you register your profile. So I must also indicate, like I said during the introduction, that I will be touching on some of the challenges that we are experiencing. Some of the challenge really that we have been observing is that people will log in and say they are not able to get the OTP. And when we investigate, you'll find that some of those members, they have used their work landline number and not smart landline number, because we do have landline numbers that receive SMS, but in most cases you find that it's a landline that doesn't receive an SMS, and that specific person is expecting the OTP to come through. So those are some of the challenges that we're experiencing. But should it happen that the OTP come through, you use the right number or email address, you will then have to punch in the OTP. And this is the kind of message that you will be receiving as part of OTP. If it's through an email, you will get this type of message here that you see on the email. And if it's an SMS, you will get this notification for you to punch in your OTP. And once you are successfully authenticated, then you will be presented with a landing page. This is a landing page where you will be able to upload your beneficial ownership information. So on this landing page, like I highlighted at the beginning, that we have 3 levels of registration or users. So on this, you can see here we have a button that says bulk upload. So the functionality of bulk upload will only be visible to those who registered themselves under organization or an entity. But if you have registered as an individual, you will only be able to see the trust beneficial ownership registration. And the trust beneficial ownership registration, it will only give you a functionality to register and upload one trust at a time. While if you have registered as an individual, as an entity or organization, you will then be able to upload your trust information through the bulk upload, which will give you functionality to upload multiple trust in one file. So I will continue to the next slide. So on the next slide here, firstly, what you need to do, you have to search if the trust that you want to upload does exist in the system. And if it does exist in the system will present you with the information of that trust. And if the trust doesn't exist in the system, you will then be presented with this pop-up message that shows that there is no matching trust that were found in the system. It means that now you need to register that trust through the template that I will be going through as we move along. And one thing that I must also highlight is that we only able to retrieve the trust that we registered since from 2008. Anything that was before 2008, we currently don't have in the system, but in all trusts that are starting from 2008, we do have those trusts. But I must also highlight that due to some inconsistencies on our side, there is a time where some of the trust, even after 2008, we were not registering them in the system. So if you want to add the trust that was registered after 2008 and you don't find it in the system, yes, just note that we have those kind of exceptions as well. So now the trust is not found. It means that you need to register your trust. Like I indicated, you will go to trust beneficial ownership, register. And when you hit on this, the system will then present this form to you where you have to select the master office where the trust has been registered, either it's Master Pretoria, and then you just have to indicate that. You also have...
Kan die kaart asseblief vir die mol gaan afvee?
Apologies, Chairperson. Is there someone want to come through?
Can
Should I continue?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sorry, we cannot see the presentation because it's only showing your initials. You're mentioning that it will show the screens, but they're not showing the screenshots.
Okay, I have shared the screen and Chairperson has confirmed. Maybe just check connectivity on your side. Chairperson, can I get confirmation if my screen is still visible?
I can definitely see it and it's moving.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sorry
maybe
to interrupt. Anybody
Please-
who can't see their screen, just click on view so that you can see the person presenting.
May I please just request that we do not come through during the presentations? It's going to be very difficult to edit out all the interruptions. And if we could please raise hands at the end of the session, please during the Q&A time. But in the meantime, should you have any questions, the Q&A is open and it is being manned by Lerato and Patrice. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. So you will then populate the information about the master office, the filing number, the trust name, and the capacity in which you are transacting on. Either you are a trustee, and then you just have to indicate that. So from there, then you get to the template that you have to use to upload the beneficial ownership information. So you'll have to hit the download Excel template. So once you click on download Excel, the system will then allow you to download the template that you have to use for you to populate all the BO information and submit that to us. So you can see on this Excel that is presented here, you have two colors. So you have green color, you also have red color on these columns. The red color, what it means is just to say the column or the variable that needs to be populated in this column is mandatory, meaning it's required. While the green, it means that it's optional. So you can provide that information, or if you don't have it, it's fine. You should still be able to submit your BO information, even though the green columns are not populated. However, should you omit any information on the red columns, the system will not allow you to continue. And I think these are some of the things that we have been experiencing from IT point of view, where you find that the users will have to complete or miss some required information. And when we return the Excel, we will return it back to them to rectify all those information, which at some point it can cause some frustration, especially if someone is pushing for the timelines. So once you have downloaded the Excel, you have put all the information that is required on your machine, then you have to drag and drop that Excel here as part of the process of uploading the Excel to Master of High Court. And once you have dragged and dropped there, you have to also give a consent through the system, confirming that as a trustee, you are keeping a record and certified ID copies of all the beneficial owners, and you are also confirming that the information that you are sending to us is authentic and is correct. So you will just indicate by checking that checkbox there. And from there, you will save your information. Upon successful saving, you will then be presented by this pop-up, which will indicate that your beneficial ownership information has been successfully saved, and you will also notified that the email will be sent to you. And as you scroll down to the system, then you will be able to see the submission history. So on this history, that's where you're able to see the Excel that you have uploaded, and also the person who did the upload, the time and the date in which the upload was done, including the name of that Excel. And through this, you're also able to view that Excel to check the details that have been captured. And now you are done, you have submitted your information. You will then be receiving the email that indicates that the trust that you have registered has been successfully created and submitted to Masters. And once you're done with the upload, you can still go back to the system just to check if your information went through successfully. You will search that trust. You'll remember when I started the presentation, through the search, as we're searching trust 246 trust, the system indicated that the trust doesn't exist. But now we went through the process of adding this trust in the system. We got notification that everything has been added. We go back to the system. We're able to search for that trust. And indeed, now now that trust is visible, we're able to see it here. So should it happen that there is a need for you to update this trust, you will select the trust that is presented to you. However, before you can continue with the update, we will have to send an email to the trustee or a nominated main contact person, just to provide an approval to say, indeed, a person who's requesting approval, who's requesting an update for this specific trust, it's a person who needs to get that access. So we'll get, when we send them an email, the email will have a link. They just have to click that link and indicate either they approve or they reject. If they approve, you will then be able to continue with the update of that specific trust. And if they reject, unfortunately, you won't be able to continue. And again, you will follow the same process that I just walked you through, where you have to make some changes on the Excel, drag and drop, give a consent and update. Once it's successful, you will be able to see that it's successful. But now, because you were dealing with the update, when you come to the upload history, you can see now you are presented with the two records. So the first record is when you were registering or creating a trust, and the second record is now after you have done the update of that specific trust. And we also indicate to you which Excel is the latest. You can see on the second column here, it says the first one that is there is the latest register. So again, you are able to view this Excel to see the information that is there. Now, because we were in a process of update, you are successfully updated your trust. Again, you will be receiving a notification that indicates that the trust has been updated successfully. You'll remember the notification that I showed you before. It mainly was talking about the creation, is the time when you were creating. Now you have updated your trust and you then get this notification. So let's get to the negative scenario. So the negative scenario is maybe, for example, in the Excel document or the template, you have populated information incorrectly. It could be you missed the mandatory field, or some of the information that you have uploaded there, it's incorrect. So you will then have to be present. When you submit your file, you will be presented with the error pop-up that indicates that the file that you have submitted, it has some issues. And in this, it also tells you, as we'll see when you go to the next slide, that the red indicates that the required fields or the required data is missing, and the yellow indicates that you have or the file has missed some validation. So this is how the file will look like. You have already populated. You can see here the cell that is highlighted in yellow. It means that this specific record has failed the validation. And as you go to the details, when you hover around this specific cell, you will see a pop-up message that actually gives you a direction and more information on what is it exactly that is wrong with the cell that we have highlighted in yellow. So you can see here the pop-up message that come in there. It also gives you a guidance that this trust, it actually belongs to Thohoyandou Master Office, not Pretoria. So you have then to export your Excel again, update this to Thohoyandou and upload it in again. So the challenge again on this one that we have experienced is that the members will say you have this Excel that cater for 100 record at a time. You go through the 100 record, everything it's populated correctly, maybe except one record. So you find that that one record, it's either you have populated wrong ID or you mixed the master office. So from ICT or system point of view, what we are doing, we reject the entire file for you to rectify that record. So based on the engagements we had with some of the members that are here, we then agreed that maybe sometime this week, actually, we're supposed to have a solution in place that will allow you that when you submit out of the 100 record, if one is just problematic, that specific trust that is problematic will only reject it, and the other trust will go through, and will also communicate through the email to say, out of this number of trust that you included in this Excel that you have sent to us, we were successfully able to load this number, and this number, it did not go through. You have to rectify. So that is something that we are working on based on the input that we received some weeks ago. But that doesn't really mean that the system is not working. The system is working with the current functionalities that have been put in place. And maybe before I move to the law enforcement, lastly, Chairperson, the other challenge that we are experiencing mainly it's on the data that get populated in this Excel. So it's just that here we didn't include the ID, but if as you scroll down, the Excel also has a column for ID, and that ID is mandatory. What we have observed is that in most cases, the users will populate the ID, will populate the date of birth instead of ID, or they will populate the name and surname of a person instead of ID. So those kind of things, when we get that, the ID, we verify it through the Home Affairs. It means that once we do our own checks, we will check that, no, this is not a real ID. Before we even go to Home Affairs, we will have to reject the file for you to rectify and align accordingly. So that is it's a presentation from the upload of the information. I must say I have shown it from the individual uploading. However, the process is exactly the same if you do the bulk upload. The difference is that on the bulk upload, in the template, you are able to add multiple trust instead of just one trust information. Now I'm moving to the law enforcement. So law enforcement, you have registered through the Master of High Court to get access to the system as a personnel who deals with law enforcement activities. So what you do, once you have logged in, this is the screen that you will be presented on. Is the same screen that other users will be able to see. However, the functionalities are very limited on this one, and also there is additional information where the law enforcement agent can be able to search using the ID number. So once you punch in the ID number or file number or trust name or URN, whatever information that will be available for you, you will then be presented with the screen, and then you see all the information is populated. It tells you where the trust belongs to from the master office. The filing number, trust name is created by this person, and the capacity of that person, and also you have access to that Excel or the BO information that has been linked to that trust. So Chairperson, I will have to end it here. But maybe before I end, I see on the agenda as you're introducing our presentation, you also touched on the modernization from ICT. I will have to apologize for this slide, but I had to put it like this so that it can be easy for me to communicate what we are doing to everyone. So in addition to the BO system that is out there and everyone is using to comply with the deadline, from the department, we are also working on a process to modernize our trust process end to end. So you remember that now when someone needs to register or make amendment, or you have to walk to the Master of High Court offices for you to do such. So what we are saying is, we are working on the solution that will allow one to register the trust online. You have to do it wherever you are, at the comfort of wherever place that you are. You don't have to visit Master of High Court, and all the documentations that will be submitted, that will come as electronic files through the system that you will be engaging with. So we have different stakeholders that will be engaging with the system. You have the trustee, the individual attorneys, the financial institutions, and any other organization that have interest or manage the trust. So what they will do, they will have to follow the process of registration. This, they will be doing it through the online, They will have to register their profile. If you are under organization, we will verify you through CIPC and other bodies where we have to verify the entities or the individuals. And the functionality that you will be able to execute within this online portal, you will be able to register for trust. And you can see on my presentation in bracket there, I'm saying including online payment. This really is something that we are hoping to have, that when you register a trust, that money that you pay, you can just pay it online. So you also will be able to search and view the trust that is existing. You'll be able to update the trust. You'll be able to terminate the trust by yourself. And as through this process, we'll also have to share your information with the Master of High Court to do verification. And also as we go with the update and the registration of the trust, we have to also make sure that we check the trustee against the disqualified person register, that the acting chief master also spoke about it during her introduction. And also through the same portal, you'll be able to receive a fully digital letter of authority that you can verify through the QR code and digital stamp if it's really a legit letter of authority. This letter of authority is similar to the one that we are issuing for deceased estate for those members that are currently using our online solution for deceased estate. And again, in addition to this modernization, what we are doing, we are planning in developing an API, which will be used to share the master data to the law enforcement or any other person who's approved to get the trust information. The law enforcement might not really get it through the API due to some restrictions, but through the process that they need to follow with the masters will then be guided if whether they are allowed to get this information through API, but the information will be available for whoever who get approved to receive that information. So this is the future of our trust solution. And we are planning to implement this new process. I wouldn't really say new process, a better way of engaging or registering, updating the trust information. We'll be able to implement this by end of this financial year, which is March 2025. So before the rollout in March 2025, some of the members or organizations that are here, you might be lucky, we might engage with you to assist us with the pilot so that by the time we roll out nationwide, at least you would have provided the input for us to better our solution before it goes to everyone. So this was just for information sharing on what we are doing. I don't think, Chairperson, I will be expecting any questions around this because it's still work in progress. But for now, I will just have to leave it here. And then we can discuss if there is a need to discuss or we move to the next point. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Tumeling. What a practical explanation. And I think a lot of people would have been grateful to see this kind of a system demonstration a couple of months back. I think you have addressed actually a lot of the issues already, and we may, just have them replicated down when we get to the questions, answers, and we can just quickly reiterate them. A couple of points actually stood out for me. A lot of people weren't aware at the time when we had to start submitting beneficial ownership registers that you can actually register or should register as an organization. And I've seen many trust service providers who actually got their staff in the office to register in individual capacity with their emails and obviously their ID numbers. And now that obviously leads to issues. You'll see in the Q&As when people leave, when you're moving to a new organization. So that makes stuff a little bit difficult now. So maybe we can have a look at a workaround now. But obviously the solution looks for all the trust service providers to actually get themselves registered as an organization. And obviously, Advocate Matiba would speak about workarounds and email addresses and helplines, but maybe we should just have a look at whether it still makes sense for those people to register as organizations now to enable bulk upload, or whether we should just work with what we've got now in terms of the individual registrations. We get the data in any event, but it's just the way it actually gets to the master. I just believe if the bulk upload works well, would have saved a lot of people a lot of time. Very happy to hear you speak about the slowness. A lot of people complain about the slowness of the system. Obviously, you have to be patient because once you've uploaded that Excel spreadsheet, a lot of verifications happen. So you can see it's running. Just don't get impatient and exit and say, no, the system doesn't work. So just wait until the verification is completed. But it will be great if speed can be prioritized. Speaking about the green and the red columns, obviously the red ones compulsory, and there we need to speak about practically now the ID numbers, because sometimes we do not have ID numbers for some role players. So what should people do at this point just to up the compliance rate and not just stop a whole trust because you simply do not have the founder's ID number, who was the old lady who was the secretary at the attorney's office at the time. And then the green fields, we need an indication from the chief master if we do not have full addresses and everything of everybody, whether we can leave them out for round one or just say, don't have or that kind of a measure, again, just to help to have the register submitted. And then obviously the Trust Online solution, I think we're all excited about, but that is to come after we should be off the grey list. So maybe just get back to Advocate Matibe in terms of the road to compliance. There's some strategies there in terms of the numbers. I said before, it's a numbers game. So the population that we're sitting with now, in there we can immediately knock off the deregistered trusts. Those are the trusts that have deregistered in the past, because remember the master did not necessarily keep a register of the deregistered trusts. So they just get filed back with the notification of deregistration. So to clean that up and what the strategy around that. And then a lot of people are now trying to register the so-called dormant trusts as people refer to them. So in terms of what the strategy there is to also, from a risk perspective, eliminate those so that we truly work and focus for the next month on the risk trusts, the active trusts that have not been deregistered yet, or there's a lot of trusts in the process of deregistration. What do we do? Because sometimes the master processes are slow in terms of getting confirmation back of those deregistrations. So Advocate, if you can just shed some light there, how we can improve clean up the portfolio that we're working with.
Thank you very much, Fia. Thank you very much to ICT for that wonderful presentation. I think it's important that we realize, number one, that we're dealing with a lot of numbers, as you've said. And initially, I did say there are about 650,000 plus minus trusts that are on the master's register. And we did speak of trusts that have been on the system or that are live and digital since 2008. And those that have been in the system since the first trust was registered in 1833, I think. The first trust was registered in 1833 with the Master of the High Court. And we now need to say for the 15th of November, what is important in terms of compliance. And the very first thing that we're going to take out of the population is terminated trusts. A lot of you may have submitted your request for termination, and due to ICT issues or due to capacity constraints, we may not have gotten around to doing that. But you would have received a proof of lodgement at your master's office, a stamped document that attests to you submitting a request for termination of trust. So what we're going to do is take the terminated trust completely out of the system. And with that, we have set up a mailbox specifically for terminated trust where you can submit your proof of lodgement of termination and would immediately take you out of the trust register. The emails are very simple, is terminated trusts, terminated trust at justice.gov.za, but not to worry if you do not have the email address. Ms. Patrice Fenter, when she presents, those email addresses are on her presentation and you will be able to see it. But also there are additional requirements for terminated trust. So just caution that not everybody sends us information and says, I have requested a termination of trust without the proof from the master with the stamped acknowledgement that indeed you did lodge a termination of trust. And what we would do is we immediately would write you a standard letter that then says you are exempted from submitting beneficial ownership information because the trust is indeed terminated. The second group affair that we are now focusing on in terms of the cleanup of the numbers is on dormant trusts. Now, a lot of trusts, there was a time in South Africa when trusts became fashionable. Everybody had a trust, families opened trusts, and it just became a fashionable status symbol. But these trusts never transacted. Some did not even have bank accounts. They were just created at the time, and people then got to understand what the trusts were meant for, and it just didn't seem appealing anymore. So what we're requesting is where there are dormant trusts, you will see there is a standard template that we've created for you that would then be filled out for dormant trusts, and we would then ask certain questions, whether it has a bank account, does not have a bank account, and those questions then, once answered in the affirmative or to the satisfaction of the master together with ICT, we would then remove those numbers or remove or exempt those trusts from submitting beneficial ownership information. So that is the first step in terms of the cleanup of the numbers. There was a question almost related to it in the Q&A to say they wish that we could work with SARS so that our numbers tie up. And I'm happy to report that we are in discussions with SARS, and we will be integrating at a future stage just on BO information. But I think it is very important that we note that the beneficial ownership information must be lodged with the master. So it doesn't help that you have submitted information with SARS and we do not have it. The regulator is the master and therefore lodge it. Our job is to make that information available to SARS, and that is exactly what we are in the process of doing. So what we have, they would have, and vice versa. So we are in a reciprocal engagement where we are sharing, we would be cross-sharing information specifically on beneficial ownership. And Fia, just maybe to mention now, there are certain types of trusts that would automatically not form part of the first tranche, which is the 15th of November. So which trusts are we looking at? The biggest focus is on inter vivos trust. That is not to say one should not lodge testamentary trust information. However, the biggest drive to the 15th of November, if all inter vivos trusts can be, that information, BO information can be lodged, it would really assist with the FATF as well as South Africa as a whole in exiting the grey list. The other information, there are certain trusts, medical negligence trusts, your RAF trusts, those are not the focus and therefore are exempted at this stage. We can categorically say your RAF trusts, your medical negligence trust, the risk in there is non-existent, therefore are exempted from submission in the first tranche that is up to the 15th of November 2024. Even during the grace period of the 30th of November, those would totally be excluded. Now, I know there are a lot of you that have submitted testamentary trust. That is fantastic. It is a requirement. However, the focus now to get the compliance numbers up, the focus is on inter vivos trust, and that is what we would be focusing on. If you've got testamentary trusts on your books, please do submit the information. It would assist in compliance. However, for us to the 15th of November, we are focusing on inter vivos. I'd like to hand over back to you, Fia. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that clears up in terms of how we're cleaning up the portfolio, that we're focusing on the risk ones for round one. I think let's now move over to kind of challenges highlighted by people and hindrances such as, can't get into the system, it bombs out, etc. It's slow. So we can achieve very close to 100% compliance. So obviously the purpose is ease of compliance. And I think Intuiling has done a great job to already help a lot of people to get around to do it. So I just want to get back to the panelists quickly. Walter, I have written an article recently about accountants who are moving very close to trustees. If they are not the trustee, then they are the accountants on these trusts, how they can actually help their clients who are often layperson trustees, because most of those trusts don't even have independent trustees on yet. So it's really, we're sitting with layperson trustees who probably don't even know about these obligations. So the accountant's probably the only professional that's going to cross their roads. The accountant's responsibilities under the non-compliance with laws and regulations, NOCLAR, as the accountants know about, just where does it place an accountant in terms of this driving deadline where, the final deadline has been given by the master?
Yeah, no, thanks for you're spot on with regards to that. Obviously, as accountants, obviously there's obligations, whether you're an accountant in practice or an accountant in business, to abide by the code relating to NOCLAR. So if there's any form of non-compliance with any laws and regulations already, there are certain aspects that kick in. And that's why it has been very important for us at SAICA to collaborate with the Master's Office, to collaborate with FIC, to collaborate with the CIPC, for them to, at various intervals, to come in and educate our members with regards to this aspect of beneficial ownership registers, because obviously it's very critical to understand that as much as we've always had the notion of beneficial ownership, but the way that it's being structured now has been legislated in a way that obviously certain timelines that need to be met, certain processes that need to be followed. So obviously with non-compliance with laws and regulations, if as an accountant or as an auditor, you're not able to pick up these things or you don't report them accordingly, obviously that leaves you in a very tight spot as an accountant, and there could be consequences for you as a professional. So that is why for us, it's quite important for us to be part of this panel today, because obviously on the one leg, as Itumeleng has rightly pointed out, we need to get the systems right. And I'm happy that, for instance, she's spoken about the fact that we don't have to test in a live environment, but we can test by having a couple of volunteers trying to test the system, because that has been a big challenge, and that's why you end up having a system being overloaded, which then means that there's a non-compliance element, fear, that obviously our members then get worried about in that regard. So that's the first layer. The second layer, obviously, that is quite critical as we discuss this aspect of NOCLA, and we're happy that we've got such a session as this webinar, is the education and awareness. So it's one thing to have a legislation that we need to abide by and ensure that we can pick up any forms of non-compliance. It's another thing to be able to put in place systems to be able to deal with those, the implementation of those legislations. But the third layer, which is quite critical, is the education and the awareness. And we've picked it up this year as we've had our compliance in practice sessions every single month, that there is that yearning from members of the public, from our members, because they don't want to be seen as being non-compliant, to actually have this education, especially when you look at things like complex structures, and trusts are a hive for complex structures. And how do you then pick it up so that you can abide by your NOCLA obligation? So that, in a nutshell, fear is why NOCLA is quite important for us as accountants, whether in practice or in business. But obviously, those three layers are quite critical: knowing the law, the systems, and the awareness thereof.
Thanks, Walter. As I said earlier, I think fortunately, unfortunately, you're sitting with probably the largest percentage of the ones that the Chief Master is after. So it will be great if we can really mobilize the accountants, generally speaking. I know, Louis, you wrote a note recently to the members to say, even though there may be problems with definitions, etc., people still have to comply. So maybe just your view in terms of the FISA members, what they have to do to remain compliant. You're on mute. You're on mute, Louis. Sorry, you're still on mute, Louis. I think Louis can't hear us. Walter, can you hear me?
Okay, they opened my mic now. Thank you very much.
Sorry, okay.
For some other reason, I'm in the meeting as an ordinary participant and not as a presenter, so my mic is closed until they opened it now again. Sorry, Fia, your question again?
Sorry, I just said, I know you've written a note to FISA members as well in terms of their obligation to comply, even though there may be challenges and difficulties and etc. So just in terms of the FISA's members' role in helping their clients to comply.
Yes. We keep on communicating. We have communicated with FISA members since the since the amendments became effective to the Trust Property Control Act, and we've also communicated the regulations and the duty to comply with that. I think it is important to note that there are serious problems with the legislation. One of the most problematic portions of the legislation is that there is absolutely no timeline in which you have to update. And obviously that is a huge problem. It means that you're a criminal from the moment that the address of a beneficiary has changed and you haven't updated it. That is also another issue, is that some of these duties, to my mind, should not carry a criminal penalty. They would be much more appropriately enforced through administrative penalties. And I think the current legislation is a blunt axe and it should be refined a lot. But be that as it may, that's what we sit with at the moment and what we have to deal with.
100%. Sadia, I think you already mentioned your compliance rate in the beginning, quite impressive. So you must have done something right. What have you guys done to actually get the compliance rate where it is? Because everybody's complaining about the same issue. So you must have done something right.
Thank you. I think our members have actually been really great in uploading the information onto the register. And I think, we've all heard about the system being slow when bulk uploads are being conducted. So our member banks have actually implemented workarounds by reducing the volume of the BO information in the spreadsheets to an average of approximately 3 trusts and maybe 12 or 13 lines at the max on the spreadsheet. And they also then will upload the spreadsheets in the early morning and in the late afternoon so that there's actually less traffic, being experienced on the master's portal or the site. And, in the past 2 weeks, our members have actually reported that there may have actually been changes made to the master system, as it is a bit quicker to actually upload the information onto the portal. So maybe of recently in the last week when we heard the deadline, maybe there is a bit more traffic that is contributing now to the slowness that we have heard about at the beginning of the session. But yeah, I think if you were looking at figures, I think, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but I mean, our members have uploaded about 84% of their trust BO information already. And they really have expended a significant amount of effort on initiatives to basically improve their compliance with their regulatory requirements. And they have really worked to and are still continuing to prioritize the uploading of the trust BO information. And I think the solution that has been proposed earlier by Lerato regarding the terminated trust is actually going to be really helpful and really useful in actually assisting with the compliance rate as well. I think another point I do want to mention is perhaps if maybe we can hear from the master regarding the delays that are currently being experienced with the issuing of letters of authority or the amended letters of authority, where the trustee has changed, because this does impact negatively on the uploading of the trust information, as the letter of authority does actually provide the mandate. So yeah, I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Advocate.
Thank you, Thea. I note first Louis' concerns regarding the legislation and the need for refinement. And I'm glad he said it is what it is now and we have to comply based on what it is. But that does not preclude the master from refining the legislation at a later stage. What we are now going to do, and I want to answer first Sadia's question regarding the delays in the amendments of issuing of letters of authority, specifically in trusts where there's been amendment. We commenced the digitization of records in 5 masters offices, and this would affect those offices, the digitization project, where, and as we mentioned earlier, trusts that had been concluded prior to or registered prior to 2008 were all in manual format and not on our system. So what we have done now in 5 major offices began the process of digitizing all these records. So the offices that are affected is Cape Town, it would be Durban, it would be Pietermaritzburg, Johannesburg, and Pretoria. So far, the issues that have been recorded or that have been registered in terms of the delays in the issuance of letters of authority has been mainly centered around Pretoria. So during this period, that is since last month, we've started a prioritization project with our digitization service provider. So we are prioritizing any amendment of letters of authority, in trust. So we do request specifically that those are prioritized, and we deal with them as and when the amendments are requested. So Pretoria mainly affected, as well as Cape Town to a lesser degree to Cape Town, because Pretoria's records, when they were digitized, included not just trust, but it encompassed deceased estates, Guardians Fund, all other products of the masters were included in the digitization project. However, as I said, we do have a workaround in place, and that workaround is seeking to prioritize trust amendments, and that is what we are doing during the course of this month. And should there be any delays, I then appeal that you send an email. Do not wait until, it's 5 days later or it's the 15th of November. Please do send an email to the Office of the Chief Master, and we will then prioritize that. We will include the email addresses that you need to send it to in the Q&A or at the end of the session. As after Ms. Venter has presented, you will get our email addresses where you then send the request for the expediting of amendments to letters of authority or amendments to trust in general that would enable you to comply. Thank you, Fia.
Thank you. I don't think we should spend too much time on it, because I really want to get to some of the questions which I see haven't been answered as we've gone along today, in terms of the penalties that it's criminalizing, non-compliance. And, I must say I've been in conversations with Treasury, the FIC, etc., and voluntary compliance was driven quite hard. But we know South Africans, they'll probably wait. I speak to a lot of people, say we'll wait for the first fines to come and then we'll do something. So obviously today is to actually not wait till the fines are going to come. But yeah, I think, are you working on something? I don't think any penalties have been issued. And, probably could have looked at administrative penalties. It's worded differently in the Trust Property Control Act. So just maybe something quick on that, but yeah, obviously not to spend too much time on it.
Thank you, Fia. I think at this stage, Ms. Patrice Venter will then make a presentation, and that presentation will speak to the penalties, will speak to the practicalities, will speak to the templates that we spoke about regarding terminated trust as well as dormant trust. But I think in that presentation, she then covers what needs to happen after this webinar or from here on. Ms. Venter, are you ready?
I am.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. I've been trying to answer your questions as far as possible in the question and answer. I can't type that fast, but I can talk very fast. So let me do that. Just give me a second so that I just share my presentation. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so a lot of what I wanted to say was already said, so I'm not going to bore you with it. I am going to focus on the things that I've seen received a lot of questions. I've even copied and pasted some responses of so many times the question has been asked. So this was just the basic introduction. What I can maybe say is that there's an obligation on the master since the amendment of the Act to keep this electronic BO register. Many people said, why are we giving so short notice? It's not short notice. These amendments came in on 1 April 2023, which means that everybody had, since April 2023, which is what, about 18 months, to actually do this. Yes, in the beginning, we had the Google form, which was not ideal, but everybody was able to at least comply as from 1 April. Unfortunately, Pia, as you said, willing compliance is obviously what we want to achieve, but we all know South Africans, and the fact that we are having this webinar is a good example of the issue that people don't want to comply if they're not forced to. And that means, unfortunately, we did have to put a time frame now. As Pia also indicated, we will have to, again, by 15 November, give feedback to FATF, and they are expecting us to have shown marked increase in compliance since the last time we reported, hence the whole drive that we are having now. So, yes, like I indicated, this is the obligations of the master. What I want to also add at this stage is the beneficial ownership register sits with the Office of the Chief Master, and it's administrated by the Office of the Chief Master and our ICT. So you cannot lodge this information personally or in hard copy or whatever at any of our master's offices. This is a centralized electronic register. So they will not be able to assist you with receiving hard copies or anything like that. I will, at the end of the presentation, give you the email addresses, and I would implore you to please make use of them. So not only keeping the electronic BO register, but law enforcement agents, which I will get to now, there's a list of them that may have, upon application, access to the information in the BO register. One of the questions that was asked was whether the information is safe and secure. It is as safe and secure as any other information the master has electronically on our systems, because it uses the same systems that we use for registering your trust, registering a deceased estate, and so forth. So yes, the information is safe. However, we have received applications from law enforcement agencies. You will notice that when I get to the list, SARS, for instance, is on the list. SARS has got access to this information. The Auditor General has got access to this information, SIU, FIC, NPA, they all have access to this register, but not a blanket access. They had to nominate specific people, which we then verified, and only those people have access to view the information on this register for purposes of investigation. So this is the obligation of the trustees. This is something else that has been asked, is whose responsibility it is. In terms of the act, the responsibility lies with the trustee. But we do allow that by way of power of attorney, someone else may register that information on your behalf as trustee. So the trustee has the obligation to lodge this register of the information with the master on the electronic platform. And then what is important, must keep up-to-date record of the following information in respect of each beneficiary. The full names, date of birth, a copy of the ID document should be on file. I can say that in some countries, though in South Africa we haven't went as far yet, there's actually on-site inspections by some of the governments to these offices of the trustees to check whether they actually have these documents on record, spot checks. So keep a copy of the identity document or passport of that person, the residential address, proof of the residential address, so forth. If the person is a taxpayer, a person's tax number, the class or category of beneficial ownership under which the person falls, the date the person became the beneficial owner, and when he ceased to be a beneficial owner. That is the information that needs to be kept also by the trustee. So yes, you have touched on the penalties for non-compliance. Just note that, yes, currently our Act says it's an offense, which means it's a criminal offense if you fail to disclose to accountable institution that you engage with in the capacity of a trustee, that you your relationship to the trust property, record the details of the accountable institution, and then here is where the masters comes in, which has been added, establish and record the beneficial ownership information, keep an up-to-date record of that information, and lodge the register with the master. Currently, there's a fine of up to 10 million rand or imprisonment or a period of 5 years or both, but I am going to discuss this just a little bit later in my presentation when I get to the challenges and the way forward. But this is what the current situation or the current act says. So information captured and uploaded on the register is deemed to be submitted to the Master of the High Court. You will get an email confirming, as Itumuleng had indicated. Currently, unfortunately, that email doesn't indicate the name of the trust. We are looking into amending that so that it's more of a formal document that you can actually file, especially where, you trust service providers who have a lot of trust that you comply with, so that your confirmation is specific to a specific trust. And then, as I said, trustees are required to keep a copy of the completed form together with the IDs of those beneficial owners in the registers. Now, FATF, as Fia also indicated, has been refining their requirements. And one of the things they added was that countries should ensure that there is adequate, accurate, and up-to-date information on our beneficial owner registers. Now, adequate means it must be sufficient to identify the natural person and their role in the trust. So on that part, I can just say a beneficial owner can only be a natural person. I am going to get to companies that's beneficial owners, but a beneficial owner can only be a natural person. Accurate means it must be verified using reliable documents or data. So currently, we are verifying the information against Home Affairs and also against electronic information, which we have available, but which is not available on all trusts, as Itumuleng also indicated. So unfortunately, we cannot do away with the verifying by Home Affairs of the ID numbers, because we need to show that we are verifying this information. We are looking at also integrating possibly with CIPC and so on to also verify what was registered with them and registered with SARS, so that we check that it's the same information lodged in all three places. However, we have not done so yet. So up to date means, and that was another question that everybody asks, is when must I now update this? So up to date means it must be updated within a reasonable period following any change. Now, the other question that people asked, and it's related to what Advocate Matiba also said, that people applied to have amendments done to their appointment letters. They've been waiting long for it to get it back, some even years. And what do they do now? The fact of the matter remains that you need to comply. So you need to comply using the information as it currently is. Using the appointment letter that you currently have, ensure that you are compliant and register that trust information. The moment you receive your confirmation back from the master that the amendment has been approved, or you receive the new letter of authority, then you log back in and you update the information so that you are compliant. It is very important that you do that. Right, so these are the law enforcement agencies that in terms of the Act will have access to your information. It's the NPA, the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, the State Security Agency, Intelligence Division of the National Defence Force, the SIU, Investigative Division in a National Department listed in Schedule 1 of the Public Service Act, Public Protector, SARS, FIC, Auditor General, and a person who is entitled to receive it in terms of other national legislation. However, they have to physically apply at the Office of the Chief Master, as I explained. We have not received applications from all of these. This is just, I'm not going to go through this. This is just what happens with the BO register. You can see that a trustee can access it and load it, but a law enforcement agent, when he's doing an investigation, can also access it, search and view your information that you uploaded. And the Office of the Chief Master grants access to that law enforcement agent. This is where you will find the link. Many people asked as well. So when you go to the Master's web portal, you will see that there is a link there to the Trust Beneficial Ownership Register. We are also planning on, because that was also a question, when you click on there and it opens it, there will also be a link to those email addresses, which I will explain later on, as well as the templates that you need to complete to attach on your email. So that is where you will find your information on the beneficial ownership, and also where you are able to register your beneficial ownership for those who don't know. This is the information that is needed. I think Itumuleng touched on that when she discussed the spreadsheet. So I'm not going to do this again unless there is someone that's got a specific question. I can, however, just highlight that when the beneficiary is a minor, we will also need the information of that guardian of that child, or if it is a company, when the trustee and any other party to the legal arrangement is a legal person, the beneficial owner of that legal person should be identified. As I indicated earlier, it should always be a natural person. So you cannot say company XYZ is the beneficiary only. You need to indicate who is in charge or in control of that company. And that is also where the linkage with CIPC will come in, because obviously those companies also had to register beneficial ownership with CIPC. So we will verify against the CIPC information whether the information that is captured here with regards to that company is indeed as was registered with CIPC. These are just the grounds which I already touched on. Then the progress we've made. Okay, you know now. Oops. You know now about the ownership, the beneficial ownership register, the access to the law enforcement agencies. Those statistics have been updated. It is now around 80,000 trusts that's updated beneficial ownership. So I just want to say to those who struggle, at least 80,000 odd so far managed to do it. So it is possible. And then, like I said, interagency and governmental collaboration. Our challenges is to increase the compliance that's currently sitting at 15%. Our awareness, the contact details of trustees. Many people indicated that, especially with the new trusts, when they want to register it, it says there's no contact details for the trustees available. They have to update. I will be talking to ICT to take that off. We did take it off for the other trusts, but we thought that by now, hopefully, people would have been capturing all of this information, which doesn't happen. So we will take it off, but what will happen then is the person that first lodges the BO information will then get access to lodge it. But once that person has lodged it, if another trustee goes, searches for the matter, and there has already been BO information lodged, they will not be able to access it unless that person who lodged it first gives them access. So they will have to request access. SMS or email will then be sent to whoever loaded it first to give them access. I know there's an issue with regards to secretaries that have been capturing this and stuff like that. that is, we will take that on a case-to-case basis if that person cannot be reached anymore to change it. But what I would suggest is someone, unless they pass away, unfortunately, but they don't just disappear overnight. So if you do know that your secretary has resigned, tell her to give someone else in the office access to that register so that work can proceed on that matter. The technical challenges has been touched on. A lot of the issues is the technical abilities of the user who is sometimes unable to work with the Excel spreadsheet. Unfortunately, I have to say people don't read the frequently asked questions document that is available on the portal. They also don't take the time and effort to go through the step-by-step guide that's available on there. And we at OCM end up having to answer questions which is actually answered in those two documents. I do that with patience, sometimes with less patience, sorry, especially if you get the same question 3 times in a matter of an hour. But please go download the frequently asked questions, download the step-by-step, and then if you still are not able to do it, then only send us an email. Like I said, 80,000 trusts were able to do this, so it is possible. The DHA verification issue, DHA is down, unfortunately, a lot. And there is the issue with the old IDs. I do not know if Itumeleng addressed it. I'm unsure what was the solution there. She can maybe come in a little bit later, where people were really, really old and like they were born in 1920, and then when they capture it, it shows it as a 2020, which is a minor. And then the implementing of prosecution or penalties and the manual registered trust prior to 2008. What I can say, there was a question around this as well. We have actually gone through a exercise of counting our trusts, because though we don't have electronic information available, the master's offices did keep manual registers of their trusts. So we asked each office to count how many are on the manual registers. We added it to the electronic registers, and we got to around 620,000 individual trusts since the first trust was registered in the master's office. Now, as Advocate Matibe indicated, we do know that a whole lot of those trusts have been terminated, but it was never a duty on the master to keep record or register of terminated trusts. So unfortunately, unless we we don't have people to do the work currently that we have to do, so this is not going to happen unless we take all the trusts out of our vaults and archives and open them all and see whether they've been terminated. The only way in which we can determine how many trusts have been terminated is with the assistance of trust service providers, trustees, and any other institution that can assist us. So we got information from SARS with regards to trusts registered with them for tax purposes. They gave us a list of active and inactive trusts, the inactive trust being trust that was registered for tax purposes but deregistered. So my logic tells me that if a trust has deregistered for tax, there is a 99.9% chance that that trust actually has been terminated. So according to what we found on the statistics from SARS, there is about 157,000 trusts which have been terminated, but we need to do our own exercise as well. Hence, we've now created this email address, which you see there, terminatedtrusts@justice.gov.za, on which you can then send us an email, and this, let me just see if it shares it. Give me a second. I'll show it to you now. It doesn't want to open it from here. There's a template that you will complete where you indicate your details of the trust, all the details of the trust, the date it's been terminated and so forth. It also requests the information from the person that is reporting the termination. And as Advocate Matiba indicated, we would like to have then also attached formal proof of the termination, and then also the ID of the person that is making this declaration, basically, so that we have that on record. Similarly with dormant trusts, but that's a separate email address. A dormant trust would be a trust that has not been economically active. So they didn't open a bank account, they do not have any fixed property, they've actually never been used. I call them shelf trusts, which have been created for tax purposes but never used. I've seen in the questions that there were many people saying, but they don't even know the name of the trust anymore. I think there's also the issue where parents might have registered a trust and never told their kids that there's a trust and never used it and they passed away. So there might be even trusts that people don't know exist. But we want to, if we can, obviously dormant trusts and terminated trusts and court-created trusts, like Advocate Matiba indicated, will be exempted from providing BO information. So if we can get a number on this, we can deduct that from the 620,000 trusts we have, which will obviously then show a marked increase in our compliance percentage. And give us a target for which we can work with. We are currently focusing, like she said, on the inter vivos trusts. According to SARS, the trusts registered with them that inactive and active, that was testamentary trusts were 54,000. We did not keep record of our testamentary trusts, so we do not know the number. Hence, we are asking people to report, though, like she said, it's not our focus area, but you are welcome to still report them. So yes, so our first phase is we are trying to determine these terminated and dormant trusts so that we can get a more accurate figure on how many beneficial ownership registers we actually need to have 100% compliance. So I will, at the end of the slide or of my presentation, which is almost at its end, just show you the documents that you need to complete for these two and then send to those addresses. We're also creating a general BO trust inquiry email address. They are at the moment busy with it, so that's why I don't have the address on here. But all three of these addresses will be available on the beneficial ownership portal for you to click on and then address. But we ask you to only please do so with regards to beneficial ownership issues. Do not send general complaints on trusts or general trusts information or amendments or anything to that, because it's going to bog down that email, which is only managed by 2 officials. And then we will not be able to focus on what we are trying to do and maybe not be able to assist everybody with the challenges and in complying in time. Okay, so we tried to do we tried to take all of the trusts registered since the 1900s, but it's a mammoth task, like I said. So our way forward is more awareness sessions, media campaigns, webinars. You will, in the next week, receive, if you are a trustee or a founder and your trust has been registered after 2013, and we do have contact details, you will receive a SMS and or an email, depending on what information we have available, to remind you of this lodgement with a link to the media statement, in a bit to get the people that we did not get in this webinar or in our Facebook or whatever to get them also to comply with a link to the beneficial ownership register so that they can comply. As Itumeleng indicated, we are working on the trust online, and part of that will also be the information that is needed for BO will be part of your registering information. Some people did indicate in the questions that they do give that information, but it's not the complete information that you currently give. For instance, where there's a company that's a beneficiary, it wasn't a requirement that you give the natural person and so on. So, but all of that will now then become part of information you lodge at registration stage. So the moment the trust is registered, it will automatically pull through to the BO, which will give you a automatic compliance, first line compliance, and then you only need to update it once it changed. So hopefully that will then also assist us going forward. It is now just the historic information, unfortunately, that we don't have and we have to catch up on. Like I said, the determining of the terminated and dormant trusts. Then also I did indicate to you that the law enforcement agencies have access to the BO register. So what we are busy developing as well is when they access the BO register looking for a specific trust and they don't find that trust's BO information, there will be an automatic reporting of non-compliance button for them, where they will be able to send the Office of the Chief Master an email with the details of that trust, which is non-compliant, so that we can then follow up or take action against that non-compliant trustees. And then we did receive some information from SARS already, so we are in the process of doing a verification there and comparing, because I think there has been a misunderstanding where people thought that when they give SARS their BO info, they have complied. But SARS does not have a legal, they are not like Master and CIPC, who are by law forced to keep these registers. So you have to lodge it with the Master as well. If you've done so with SARS, very good, I'm glad for you, but you also have to do it with the Master. You actually have to do it with the Master. So then action against non-compliant trustees, I promised I will get to this. So like Louis was saying, we are all criminals currently, or a lot of us. So we had some discussions with other countries and so forth, and it seems that most countries did away with the criminal offense non-compliance due to the huge burden it places on the prosecuting authority and state resources, which we know we don't have much of. However, levying only administrative penalty is not necessarily successful, because paying a fine of 10 million when you are receiving 10 billion rands worth of benefit is not really a deterring method. So what seems to be working in most countries, and what we are contemplating changing our act, is administrative fines, but combined with either a deregistration or a list of disqualified trustees. So if you're a trustee and you haven't complied, you go on a list of disqualified trustees, which means that you cannot be appointed as a trustee again in any trust. And also what some countries were doing was freezing the bank accounts of those trusts that was non-compliant. All of these seem to be very effective. So seeing that South Africa is not very willing to comply, these might be penalties or administrative actions that we might consider implementing going forward when we amend the trust bill. So I'm sure this is not something that you would want to happen to you or your trust. So yeah. Then what's happening? Let me see. My screen is, wait, there. So trust service providers in our view, are best placed to obtain the information that is needed from their customers and ensure that the customer understands the importance of providing the information and complying. So due to the nature of the relationship between trust service providers and trustees, they will also have the up-to-date contact details, most probably of the trust, and know whether it is active, dormant, or terminated. That is why we're having this webinar with you to ask you to please ensure that we as a country can comply and get off the grey list. So let me then quickly, I'm just going to stop sharing and then I'm quickly going to share those templates. If you just give me a second. So this would be, it's a very basic, very basic template for confirming a terminated trust. You will see there's type of trust where you can click on a drop down to choose your type of trust. The master's office where you can also click on a drop down. Your reference number as on the appointment letter, the trust name, full names and surname of the last trustees and the ID number if available. This is for terminated trust most. Your date of your application for your termination, reason for the termination, date of the confirmation of the termination for which you then attach proof. And this is the details of the person lodging the confirmation. It's the full names, ID number, contact address, contract number, preferably a cell number because we might send SMSs to these people, not peoples, sorry. My Afrikaans comes through sometimes. And then your email address as well as the authority on which you provide the information, for which there's also a drop down from which you can choose. So, and nothing of this, be assured, will give you errors or yellow or red or anything funny. When you have to capture something, it's free capturing, but please obviously give us the information correctly. Ensure that it's correctly because it's to your own benefit, because only if you've completed this correctly and we are able to trace this, can we send you the confirmation to say you are exempted. Then the same with the dormant trusts are similar. Where is it? Terminated, dormant. There's the dormant one. It's basically exactly the same, except for it asks the date of appointment of the trustees because they are still trusts. And then whether there was a bank account opened, which is just a yes or no question, and whether there's been a fixed property, which is also a yes or no. And then if you answered yes, the full detail of whatever it was that you have there. So account number, which bank, so on. The reason why you are saying it's dormant then, and would you like to apply for termination of this trust? Because a lot of these dormant trusts, we've seen an increase in applications for terminations because people don't want to register BO information, so they want to apply for termination. So we're asking you here whether you want to apply for termination of this trust. So if you gave us enough information, we can then going forward take it to assist you to have your trust formally terminated, and again the details of the person confirming. And yeah, like I said, then attach the ID of that person. So it's actually very straightforward. I think I covered most of what I wanted to say. Let me just quickly check. There's been a lot of questions on, and that is the one that I copied and shared the response on what do we do with to register a BO information on a trust registered prior to 2008, 2013, those ones that was done manually. When you search for the trust, search only by the specific name, because that is another thing that people do not understand. if you search by a number, you can have 16 trusts with the same number because the offices in those old ones used the same number without the suffix. So it doesn't mean there's an error if you find a trust with the same number as yours, or even another trust with the same name but a different number, because it is possible. It's possible to have more than one trust with the same name but different number. So you search on the exact name only first. If you find no record, then you will see that the BO register button will become active. You can click on there and you download the spreadsheet, and you can then complete the beneficial ownership information. If there's more than one trust with the same name, search on the exact number until you find no matches, and then you can upload that information. So the fact that you don't find it when you search for it doesn't mean that you can't upload it. The only trust for which you will find information is the ones that the master have electronically registered on our system when you registered the trust.
Patrice,
Yes.
can we, running a little bit over time, can you just wrap up quick, and then we probably need to give like 5 opportunities for questions. We haven't covered any of the actual questions, but we covered so many of them during the course of the presentation, as well as in your presentation, Patrice. So I think ICT has obviously got the most questions. I mean, if you can just carry on populating the FAQs, it's going to save you a lot of answering emails. So I thought that's probably the best place, rather than trying to pump through a lot of questions. Now they have most of the questions raised, even those that were answered. So if we can ask that those be incorporated in the FAQs, and then we can just give people like opportunity, a couple, let's say 5 people, just ask quick questions, and then we can probably wrap up.
Okay, thanks, Fia. I was in any case at the end. I checked my list and I discussed everything. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I will now disappear from the screen.
Thanks. Okay, so how are we going to do the questions? Do people want to raise their hands, or do we have people who want to ask any questions at this point?
Fia, if I may propose that we take raised hands. This is the stage where we get to allow participants to ask questions, and we'll field them. ICT is still here if they're ICT related. Thank you.
Okay, so can we see any raised hands? I don't know. Would they pop up somewhere?
Yeah, I'll help you. I raised my hand a long time ago.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I can't even see it. Okay.
A couple of things that I think that comes out of Patrice's presentation. The one thing that she mentioned is that trustees can give somebody power of attorney to capture on their behalf. That's on the system. I just want to raise a point of caution here, and that is that you can do that, obviously, but remember that you can only delegate responsibility. You cannot delegate accountability. So the trustee remains liable for the correctness of everything that is captured by such a person that was given the authority to capture on behalf of the trustee. Then I think just a question for Patrice. Before I do that, just a word of warning. If you come down too hard on trust service providers, I have already been contacted by several FISA members who said, look, I've been a trustee for many, many years on several client trusts. I've actually resigned all trusteeships because it's just not worth it anymore. So I'm not going to dabble in that anymore. I'll do deceased estates, I'll do estate planning, etc., etc. I'll help people, but I'm I'm not taking up any further trusteeships. And I think that's exactly what we don't want. We don't want the professionals to walk away from trusteeships. So that just in terms of penalties and admin penalties and disqualifying people and that kind of thing, I think you need to think very carefully. And then just a practical question for Patrice. If you've already lodged papers to terminate a trust, if you already well, the resolution is there by the trustees, this trust is terminated. Now we've lodged papers with the master, please deregister. On which of those two email addresses do you want that? On the dormant or the terminated? Because it's technically terminated, but in the master's books, it's not yet terminated.
Yeah, do you want me to answer, or are you first
Yes.
taking all the questions?
No,
Are we
you can
not
answer.
taking all the questions first, given the time that's left? If I may propose, Fia, that we take Gideon, Daphne, Genevieve, Lawrence, and Isabel Yoster. I will allow their mics while they come on.
Good.
Okay, I'm going to allow Gideon to come through. Gideon, you can unmute and come through. Gideon, you can just unmute and speak.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Yes, good afternoon. Thanks very much. Mine is not a question per se. It's just a bit of concern that we only started to know this today, that there is this thing called BO, which we were not even aware for the past 18 months or 8 years or whatever months back. So I'm worried about the time frame that we are expected to comply for the 15th, which is the 15th of November, which I know it's going to be probably very difficult to some of us who are doing this on our own, which we don't have the service providers to do it for ourselves. So we were not aware, and we have never seen any communication with regards to this for the past those 18 years, months. So perhaps maybe someone can clarify how was it communicated, because we didn't get any communication. We are managing the trust for the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. Thank you very much.
Genevieve, nice to see you on. You can go next.
It's Daphne next.
Daphne next.
Yeah, Daphne is next. Daphne, unmute and go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Perfect. My question was more, there was no specification on how can we apply for getting an organization, or also, I think it was mentioned as an admin access to the website. When you register to the website, you can only register as an individual, so you can't then file for several trusts. And I wasn't clear on what is the process to register as an organization to be able to file for several trusts. Thank you.
Okay. Who's up next?
Genevieve is up next. Genevieve, if you can just unmute and go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. My question was actually the same as Daphne. So I was also unaware that you can register as an organization. And obviously, if we can do a bulk upload, that would save a lot of time. So if we can just elaborate on the process of amending your registration to an organization instead of an individual, that would really be great.
Excellent. Lawrence, I've allowed your mic, and Genevieve, I've disabled yours. Lawrence, unmute and go ahead.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. I've got just a question. I've got a trust that's trading as a church. So the trust deed says that the beneficiaries are the church members. How are we going to give the details of the beneficiaries then on that? Yeah. And then the other one is, we need a trust deed of a trust. We applied on the master, but from April this year, and we haven't received any feedback. So just want to find out how do I get the trust deed, a copy of that.
Which master's office before you go?
Pretoria. Sorry, Pretoria.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so shall we go through the answers for those questions?
There is Isabel. Isabel Joster is the last one. Isabel.
Oh, the last one.
Yeah. Isabel Joster. Unmute and go ahead. Isabel. Okay, I think we can go ahead and answer the questions here because Isabel is not unmuting.
Okay.
Okay,
So
I'm going to disable her mic. Yeah.
Okay, so which email, Louis asked if you're in the process of deregistration. To me, it sits in the dormant one. The deregistered one are the already deregistered, which have been deregistered with the master and confirmation has been received. The master just did not keep track of those ones. So unless I'm wrong, it would be the dormant trust that you would put it under, but it is that's why you are in the process of deregistering it. So it's on the dormant email.
Yes, if the trustees did not receive any proof or acknowledgement from the master's office after submission of a request for termination of a trust, then we're going to deal with it in this instance in the dormant trust mail account. You are right, FIA will deal with it in the dormant trust. However, if you lodge physically in the master and you received that acknowledgement, it would then be a terminated trust. So when you do submit in the dormant trust, Louis, and I think to everybody else, the resolution then would then be attached in terms of the trustee's resolution to terminate the trust. It might not, the termination might not be registered with the master yet, but it is something that we can then see how we expedite with the relevant master's office. Thank you, Fia. And I think maybe if I can go to, there was a question, I think from Gideon, regarding the fact that they did not know about these regulations and when did they come into effect. The media statement came into effect on the 31st of March 2023. But not that media statement notwithstanding, there have been several communications on social media platforms. The ministry has released several statements with the latest in September. This whole version of beneficial ownership was launched by the then Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Ronald Lamola, on the 10th of October 2023, which was in conjunction with the Deceased Estates online registration system. So this version has been in effect for a year, and the grey listing of the country I don't think it's news, Gideon, and we are happy to send you the media statements that have been released. But if you need assistance in terms of compliance, you've got ICT, Lerato, and you've got ourselves in the form of Patrice, who will assist you in terms of how do you quickly comply with the requirements. But the information has been out there for quite some time. And then Daphne asked, I think it was two people that asked, how do we get admin access? I think, Fia, that is an ICT question. I see Itumeleng is still on the line, Lerato is still on the line. May I then give the space to them to answer the change from individual registration to an entity registration to them? ICT?
Okay, thanks, Acting Chief Master. So with regard to the registration of the administrator, we don't have this functionality in the system, like as I indicated. So the members, they have to send a request through the DOJ DE support at justice.gov.za. I think Lerato has been communicating the support email on the chat. So during the trainings and the demonstrations that we have done with other the members of BASA and other professional bodies, we communicated this information. So I'll request that they send that through that support email so we can assist. Thanks.
Can I just ask Itumeleng, is it a quick process? I mean, a lot of people complain that they don't get response from the master when they email. Is this a manned email? Is it worth your while to wait to get deregistered as an organization because time is not on our side? How long will it typically take, or does it typically take to have somebody registered an organization? Is it complex? Does it take a lot of time, or should people just start pumping it away and you know, submit in a personal capacity?
I think just to answer your question, Fia, yes, it's a bit of a process because we need to manually verify those requests if indeed they belong to those organizations. I will say maybe a week we can be able to respond to those requests. But looking at the timeline that we are having now, I wouldn't really suggest that most of the members here follow that process. They can continue as individuals, but if really you feel like you have number of trusts that you need to submit, you can still submit that request, and let's see how we can assist in order for you to get the functionality to do the bulk upload. But indeed, it's a process because we need to engage with the colleagues from master so that we verify before we can create that administrator to manage the profile for the entity. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think if people run their process in parallel, if you have volumes to submit, I think the bulk submission is probably still going to save you total time. So get the registration process going, as well as, you know, start creating the files along. So the moment you are registered organization, you can then just literally submit the file, because it's still going to take a while to get some of the information that's outstanding.
100% true. Thanks.
Okay, so people can bank on a week to get themselves registered. And then Advocate, if you want to just chat about Lawrence's question about which beneficiaries to include.
Oh, yes, Lawrence's question about the church trust, I'm going to give it to Ms. Venter to answer regarding church trusts. Ms. Venter.
Thank you. Yes, I have answered that question in the Q&A as well. When a church has a class of, not only a church, anywhere, when it's a class of beneficiaries, a beneficiary must be able, it's a natural person and must be identified by name or identifiable by name. So what it means is, yes, a class of beneficiaries are beneficial owners. But once someone in that class received a benefit and can thus be identified by name, then the beneficial owner register for that trust needs to be updated with that specific person's details as one of the beneficiaries as well. I think that clarifies the question. And sorry, Fia, if you can just allow me, because I see there's lots of questions with regards to that email address. It will be available as a link on the BO register portal together with the templates that you can use. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, it's a pity we couldn't get to all the practical questions. I hope we can include them as FAQs, so Patrice and her team doesn't get millions of emails to clarify matters. So does that bring us to the end? Sorry, we've literally run half an hour over. I think it was a necessary session, and I hope everybody got value out of it. Certainly I learn every time. So yes, I think it will make things easier, and it's now just to try and get as many in as we can, and then obviously where we get stuck to approach the master on those emails. And yeah, if you get stuck, you know, on LinkedIn, everywhere people are chatting in terms of what to do. I think if the professional bodies represented here could, you know, just encourage their members and communicate to them in terms of practical issues. But I think the FAQ would go a long way to drive people to, because people are literally getting stuck to submit. If there's any final comments from your side, Advocate, or is this done?
I think I just want to thank everybody for being present here today. I know we might not have covered all your questions. There will be an email that is open for questions, and that email address where we would man it, and we will answer as many questions as possible until the 15th of November. And it will be on the portal as well, including the emails for terminated and dormant trusts. But I really just want to thank everybody for, it shows a willingness to comply, that we had over 870 people attending this webinar, and we really appreciate your presence. And from our side, we are ready to assist. We are willing to assist you with any question that you might have. I see I'm already receiving lots of emails from trustees regarding the webinar, as well as the information that's been shared. Just to reiterate, this will be shared as a YouTube link, and it will be available probably on Friday after just a few edits. We do apologize that the video by Dr. Haramse could not be played and could not be heard, but there will be a follow-up webinar as we get closer to the deadline. There will be a follow-up just to assist with any residual issues that may still be prevalent, and closer to, as I said, there is the 15th, the deadline is the 15th of November. We would like everybody to comply by the 15th of November. However, should you experience any difficulties, you will get a grace period from the 15th to the 30th of November, in keeping with Treasury's deadline of the 30th. Ours is the 15th, but we will, on an exceptional basis, grant a grace period until the end of November. So we will have a follow-up webinar where we just find out where are we and how many people have complied. Thank you so much to the panelists as well for gracing us with their presence today, and for engaging us on this topical issue that we really needed to talk about, and the importance of it in South Africa exiting the grey listing status. Thank you so much to FIA as well for agreeing to moderate and facilitate the session for us. From my side, gratitude to you. Thank you.
Thank you.